excited to start this new month. There's a lot of really amazing things happening this month, including Chinese New Year's, the Lunar New Year's. But today we're really excited to dive into a conversation about completions because that's what's showing up for us right now. We started 2024 and I don't know, I kind of felt like, wait, what about 2023? There was still a lot of things that I was working on for closure or putting things to closure. So a lot of the focus that we've been working on personally and with our relationship, with our business and with everything, we've been just focused on completing processes. So, I'm always thinking about what's in the way of our potential, what is it that keeps us stuck in patterns and cycles? We were hesitant to start the cycles, this new cycle, just because it just felt like, the same thing's going to happen again. Like we're going to have all these New Year's resolutions, and then at some point we're going to drop them all and go back to who we were in 2023 or beyond. And we were just like scratching our heads a bit, and it's like, this is a common thing in humanity. You see, even with relationships nowadays, we have so many images, we have so many stories of how images should look and feel. We have all these images of how a new year should look and feel through imagery, really. The storybook picture is that it's like it looks perfectly magical, but in reality, your Instagram feed is not your real life.
Well, I mean, stories is what keeps us connected to tradition. And there's nothing wrong with tradition. But if we allow the tradition to evolve, we then start generating another cycle. And what I've been learning, what I've been steeping in lately is kind of this spiral effect, this spiral idea that, yes, it's a circular pattern, but it keeps expanding. And it keeps, journeying and it keeps evolving. So if we embody more of that behavior of completing cycles, then we start to kind of evolve, right? The tradition in us starts to evolve. And we need traditions. We need our stories. Otherwise, we lose our culture. We lose our connection. We lose our ability to relate and to connect. In dialogue, in relationship, in connection, in, humanity, in humility, and all those things, if we don't give the tradition the ability to evolve through us. Because sometimes, eventually it dies if it's disembodied, if it's not embodied, if it's not practiced. Say, for example, Kundalini yoga, if it's not practice, the tradition will die, right? But then it's up to us to allow it to evolve because it's embodied.
Yeah. So life flows in cycles, right? So, and in each of these cycles, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end, right? In humanity, we have seasons, we have time. We just talked about a new year, and we talk a lot about the moon cycle, right? Full moon, new moon, 4th day of the moon, 11th day of the moon. There's cycles within cycles, and we have cycles within ourselves. We have phases of relationships. We have phases of, these patterns that play themselves out, family, our relationship with money, our relationship with a romantic partner, our relationship with friends, our business. And within all these cycles, if we're not consciously putting things into close, we carry the weight of the past cycle into the current cycle. And so like you start this new year and you have this backpack and you still got 2023 on your back because you haven't closed a lot of things, And so to create a life that, in a way of being, that is continuously closing loops, closing cycles, is a very powerful way of being.
Completions. And it takes discipline to complete things, right?
Yeah.
It takes self-respect. And it takes that self-initiation to to continue, to complete, to close the loop.
Yes.
Recycling.
Yeah, and so we're kind of all, we had this interesting experience. We were looking for home for a long time. We were in Canada. We're like, where's our home in Canada? And we were living, every winter came around. Summer was wonderful, but the winter came around and it was like 10 months and we were just like, ooh, this is not our home. It doesn't feel right. We tried everything. We were looking for home in British Columbia, California, all the way up the coast, and Mexico, and nothing really felt like home. And I think that's an innate thing that humans were all looking for, this sense of home. Mm-hmm. And home, what we've discovered since moving to Bali, even though we feel very much at home here in Bali, home is that sense of wholeness that arises when you feel complete.
And not to say that you're incomplete, but there is the yin and the yang, or the yin and the yang, and when it comes together, it becomes a unit. It becomes a fulfilled feeling of holiness, of wholesomeness. Yeah,
we all have this like deep longing for wholeness. We all have this, and it's buried deep, and for maybe some of us it's not buried so deep, but this is a very consistent thing, is that we're searching for home, and ultimately we find ourselves eventually at home within ourselves, within the moment, within a relationship, So it was interesting, we finally found this bridge, and we found ourselves in Bali. Of course, there's the honeymoon phase, right? We get to a new country, you get to a new city, you get to a new year, you get to all these new things, and that's the thing. That's like our way of being now. We just swipe, we just keep going. The next relationship, next business, next year, and if we have that habit of not actually being conscious of what needs to be closed and continuously closing loops and cleaning.
It's always kind of this search for, it's got to be better. There's got to be something better. There's got to be something better. It's almost like we're trapped in another cycle of chronic dissatisfaction.
Yeah. And ultimately we're looking for wholeness, and that wholeness comes through completion. Yeah. And so thinking about it, there's this blind spot that, of these patterns. It must be a blind spot, because how do we just keep letting these patterns repeat themselves, right? Of like a relationship with my father that just keeps playing itself out, or a relationship with your family or your parents that just keep playing itself out. It's a bit of a blind spot, and this is kind of how it works. So the mind, it doesn't really distinguish time. The mind,
it doesn't know whether the past is being played now.
Yeah, exactly. So quite often the past is being brought into the present, and so there's two focal points that we can play from. One is the mind, which is quite automatic, and coming from the mind is actually always in the past, because the mind's reference point is the past experience.
Yeah.
So the mind is always coming from the past experience. So the mind is always generating this entanglement of like the past being the present. And so a lot of people have a lot of fears of like,
because
this happened in the past, and it's going to happen again. The mind,
and because we
that.
seek it, so we keep confirming it.
And the pattern keeps going and going and going. And the mind says that this pattern is real. And it takes a lot of consciousness to be like, actually, no, this is not a real fear.
And a lot of prana.
A lot of breathing, a lot of breath work. So reality appears to us as a phenomenon. And this phenomenon appears to us through where we're looking from, our perspective, right? So our perspective, or where we're looking from, the mind is looking from the past. So that includes all your past experiences, all your past traumas, all your past.
Past relations, yes.
And I remember when we were in our third year of our festival, and we, you looked at me, and we were about to embark on a big investment, and it was kind of breaking even. We were making a little living, but the level that we were taking it to was like, whoa, you sure you want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the patterns were coming up of like my relationship with finances and how to manage a business and how to manage life like that. And the way I was able to awaken from this moment, I spoke to a mentor of mine, and I really stepped into the view that I was coming from. I realized the past story that was repeating itself was because I was operating fully from my mind. And the second I shifted to operating more from my heart, a lot of things shifted. So our festival is and was called Bloom. And for the first 2 years, it was a working title.
We were kind of still allowing it to reveal itself. But it felt good,
Yeah, it felt good, but we didn't fully trust it at the moment.
Yeah, because we were doubting.
Yeah. Then this question you asked,
looking for something better,
made me look deeper. And I said, if I wasn't doing the festival Bloom, I would be helping people bloom. And then no matter what, I realized blooming is my calling. Blooming is the way I see reality. The way when I'm in my heart, I want everyone to bloom. I want everyone to experience a level of joy and peace and freedom, that I've got to experience after feeling all the other things, after the ups and downs of life. So I realized people are blooming is my calling. And then I looked at Myrah and I'm like, hey, Myrah, we had a small apartment in Canada, and she was new to the city, and she was inviting people, or actually women, over for tea ceremonies. And so it started off real cute. It was like 1 or 2 women, and all of a sudden it's like a whole freaking apartment full of them, like 15 women.
We had to rent a special venue.
We had to rent a whole hall for it, and it turned into a festival. But we realized, the thing was, I asked Myrah, I'm like, what gets you so excited about hosting these events? And it was, she's like, there's this 17-year-old girl, and she is amazing at tarot. And I'm so excited to put her on the platform, to have her sit in front of all these women and just share her gifts. And Myrah was lit. More than you knew, right?
Yeah.
At first, when I asked you the question, she's like, I want to free women in Guatemala. And I want to create a project in Guatemala and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I think the woman you want to free is yourself.
Yep, that was the baseline.
Yeah. And so we realized, Myrah's gift to the world was empowering women, because that's the thing that you wanted most in your life.
Yeah, and with a, not in a harsh tone, but with softness and grace and a gentle approach. As I was seeing that a lot of the self-empowered movement within the feminine domain was very not aggressive, but just
Yeah, it was these Ashtangi power yogis running the show and leading the consciousness charge.
Yeah, but in that reflection, it was just a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. So for me, the motivation was to bring joy. So when that 17-year-old girl at the time was doing these tarot card readings, she was just joy. She was emanating joy, beauty, radiance, and it rippled out, and it created so much grace and beauty and softness.
And we were making a little living, but the level that we were taking it to was like, whoa, you sure you want to do this, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the patterns were coming up of my relationship with finances and how to manage a business and how to manage life like that. And the way I was able to awaken from this moment, I spoke to a mentor of mine, and I really stepped into the view that I was coming from. I realized the past story that was repeating itself was because I was operating fully from my mind. And the second I shifted to operating more from my heart, a lot of things shifted. So our festival is and was called Bloom. And for the first 2 years, it was a working title.
We were kind of still allowing it to reveal itself, but it felt good, you know.
Yeah, it felt good, but we didn't fully trust it at the moment.
Yeah, because we were doubting.
Yeah, then this question you asked,
looking for something better,
made me look deeper, and I said, you know, if I wasn't doing the festival bloom, I would be helping people bloom. And then no matter what, I realized blooming is my calling. Blooming is the way I see reality. The way when I'm in my heart, I want everyone to bloom. I want everyone to experience a level of joy and peace and freedom, you know, that I've got to experience after feeling all the other things, after the ups and downs of life. So I realized people are blooming is my calling. And then I looked at Myrah and I'm like, hey, Myrah, like, you know, we had a small apartment in Canada, and she was new to the city, and she was inviting people, or actually women, over for tea ceremonies. And so it started off real cute. It was like 1 or 2 women, and all of a sudden it's like a whole freaking apartment full of them, like 15 women.
We had to rent a special venue.
When we had to rent a whole hall for it, and it turned into a festival. But we realized, like, the thing was, I asked Myrah, I'm like, what gets you so excited about hosting these events? And it was, you know, she's like, you know, there's this 17-year-old girl, and she is amazing at tarot. And I'm so excited to put her on the platform, to have her sit in front of all these women and just share her gifts. And Myrah was lit. More than you knew, right?
Yeah.
At first, when I asked you the question, she's like, I want to free women in Guatemala, and I want to create a project in Guatemala, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, you know, I think the woman you want to free is yourself.
Yep, that was the baseline.
Yeah. And so we realized, you know, Myrah's gift to the world was empowering women, because that's the thing that you wanted most in your life.
Yeah, and with a, you're not in a harsh tone, but with like softness and grace and a gentle approach. As I was seeing that a lot of the like self-empowered movement within the feminine domain was very not aggressive, but just, you know.
Yeah, it was these Ashtangi power yogis running the show and leading the consciousness charge.
Yeah, but in that reflection, it was just a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. So for me, the motivation was to bring joy. So when that 17-year-old girl at the time was doing these tarot card readings, she was just joy. She was emanating joy, beauty, radiance. And it rippled out, and it created so much grace and beauty and softness.
So we share these two stories because this is how we were able to move ourselves out of the blind spot of operating from the past, which is a natural thing that we all do. Because we saw in this blind spot, we are repeating patterns that are not ours, that are my father's and her father's and our ancestors, which we bless them and we're so grateful for them. Yet we don't want to we want to create our own patterns. We want to create our own way. And so we were able to uproot and shine a light on the blind spot by getting into our heart and moving beyond the mind, because we knew the mind is coming from the past. The mind is bringing up only what it knew before.
You have to remember, too, that part of this adaptation wasn't coming from, you know, an egoic place. It was really coming from a community space, a space of creating, again, more fluidity, more freedom, more relationships, more ways to gather together, to continue to share in story and traditions, and allowing that embodiment to evolve, you know, to break free from the habitual, you know, haunting thoughts and patterns that we either choose to carry or don't choose to carry.
Yeah. So so the first step is like, whoa, the way we're kind of designed here is that we're coming from this illusion. We're coming from this idea that, well, the mind is coming from the past. The blind spot is, whoa, we don't realize that the mind is continuously just coming from the past. Yet, if
Yeah.
we, through breath, through practices, we bring ourselves into the present moment and bring light and bring awareness to, whoa, that's a pattern. That's from the past. I'm going to be here. That will bring us home. This will bring us back to the state of wholeness. Otherwise we're just going to be looking for it everywhere we go.
Yeah. And the beautiful thing about a relationship is that sometimes, the opposite can see us more clearer than we can see ourselves. So you always kind of pinpoint my patterns. And depending on your, the method that you've been applying, that you're practicing and embodying, depending the depth of that method of self-cultivation and preservation, you're either triggered by it or you're not. Quite often I find myself being so triggered and like, F off, let me be in my misery.
Well, there's that quote. I don't know what movie it's from. I think it's actually Jerry Maguire. And it was something like, you complete me. It's such a cheesy relationship quote, but it's so true.
It's in every rom-com.
This is how we complete each other, is we help each other complete each other.
Yeah.
I help you complete you completing yourself. Not that I complete you, but I help you complete you,
So that I can see, the default or the program that I'm running that he knows, because we commune in areas and aspects that we want to kind of, become a little bit more exalted in. Like, I know I want to be a better mother, but why am I like reacting so, victimized by my daughter not wanting to wear what I told her to wear? And it's like, because I was controlled, it's me trying to control.
Yeah,
And
so the past coming back, that blind spot that you don't even realize you're coming from.
Exactly.
Right?
So when he calls it out, of course I'm, let me be in my thing. But then it takes a good ability and a good practice to be able to it's not about me, it's about my bigger version of myself that I strive to become.
Our teachers, Kathy and Nando, mentors, friends, they tell us all the time that humbleness is the first door to take in life, in relationship especially. That we humble each other to that feedback that we may give one another. If we take it personally, then it's not really going to help.
And that's the cosmic joke. Is, don't be so serious. Don't be so serious when your reflection, your mirror, is reflecting back at you the thing that you've been trying to overcome, or the thing that you've been trying to not repeat.
Reminds me of when my yoga teacher of the past, Ramin, used to say, stop being such a tight ass during downward dog. I had tight hamstrings. And it was just this humbleness to be like, to let go, that I trust you, wife, that you complete me.
Yes.
And your job is to show me my patterns. You don't have to like that. It's just more like, hey, did you notice? Did you notice like when your daughter did this, you did this? Or hey, did you notice your son was doing this and you did that?
Yeah.
And then for me to take it back and make notes on these things.
There are opportunities to explore. Yeah. They're not these like concrete, set in stones ways of behaving. When we come together and we pinpoint these things, there are opportunities to explore deeper. And
the thing about it is, we're so quick nowadays. We're always like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. That if you don't slow down and catch it and record it in a notebook. So once you catch the pattern, immediately write it down. If you're really fancy, put it in an Excel sheet, put a date on it, and just say, here was the trigger, here's what happened, and just make a habit of, wow, I'm going to complete all of these things. In a month, you could say, wow, here's the 30 things that came up, and here's what I see as the pattern, and here's where it came from, and here's how I'm going to close them. Whoa.
Yeah.
You have to, it's a delicate there's a delicate space with relationship, right? Where it could be taken as blaming, that you're blaming the child, or you're blaming the wife, or the wife's blaming the husband, right? But if you both commit to, number one, going to one, I'm no longer operating from my view of reality, which is my mind. I'm operating from my calling, my dharma. People are blooming, women are empowered. And if we're operating from there, we're committing to moving away from the vicious circle of blame, and we're moving into learning. Number one, we're committing to being humble. Number two, we're committing to learning, to be in a conscious state of learning so we can create new patterns, so that we can truly create a new future.
Receptivity, yeah. Humility, receptivity, and ultimately trust. And
so then we allow completion to be a part of our lives in that way. I feel like we should write these back into our vows. I now commit.
I now recommit to deepening my
Our wedding
humility.
vows are being rewritten.
To be continued.
So completion is a process. And, wherever you go, there you are. That's the thing that we're trying to avoid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is just the way it is, You have a new job. There's a honeymoon phase. You love it. And then it starts to feel like your old job. Because
then the
keep showing
patterns
up the same way.
reemerge. Yeah, because the reason why that honeymoon phase is so prevalent is because you're so present. But then you get into the rhythm and it becomes mundane. And one thing that you can, when you align yourself to your destiny, however it unfolds for you, right? The better version of yourself. One thing I remember Kathy taught us was that even if the mundane feels habitual, it's your opportunity to weave in the joy. It's your opportunity to weave in aspects that you strive to want to commune with, that you strive to want to be in allyship with, that you want to cultivate, embody more.
So, have you ever done a course that you didn't complete?
Oh my God, yes.
Have you ever started a new year and didn't complete the year before? Have you ever started a new relationship, like even a new girlfriend or a new, dude friend or whatever? Yeah, we all do these things where, you take it to almost the finish line and you don't complete it. We had this one course we started together and there's like one module left.
Or start a course and not
And we started
complete it.
another one. So let's commit to finishing that and just bring this to life. The podcast has been great because a lot of this stuff we talk about becomes alive in our lives. And that's been a real blessing. So time lives in your mind. Time exists in our story.
Yep.
We are timeless. It's all in the mind, the rest. Yeah. So we bring the story everywhere we go. And in that way, the same patterns and same cycles keep repeating. We start to realize that, we start to see it. And the big thing is, okay, I am aware now. That's the first step. The first step of this whole process is, number one, I am now aware. So we help each other become aware. Be aware of what's stuck, right? What is repeating? What's showing itself up that is stuck? And that's the beauty of life, is like, what's in the way is the way. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to go searching for anything. You just wake up, brush your teeth, do your Kundalini yoga, have your tea, do your tea ceremony, get the kids to school, or whatever your pattern is, whatever your processes are. You just live. Then you live in a way that you're like, I'm consciously completing programs. I'm completing things, and watch. Things will start to show up for you to complete. An email out of nowhere like, hey, we were wondering if, boom, that's an opportunity for you to complete that situation,
Close it.
Yeah, like our bookkeeper just emailed us from Canada the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, great. And I didn't even message her. She messaged me, and I'm like, it's calling to be closed. Wonderful. That's just beauty. So we don't have to look anywhere. We don't have to do anything. We just have to start to commit to the process of having a completion in our lives. I complete everything so that I can be fully present for creating a beautiful future. Make sense? So a part of that is, well, then we talked about it a little bit, but taking 100% responsibility. I feel like we talk about it every podcast, but really that's it. So now I'm aware of the thing that's causing the patterns and where I'm stuck, or at least like I'm aware that I'm stuck in this, or I'm aware that I'm seeing this pattern. Then the next step is to take ownership. That, hey, okay, I'm responsible for that showing up in my life. Because if you use the blame game, like, oh, it was the market crashing, or it was her fault, or it was that culture's fault, or my culture's fault, or whatever you come up with.
This always happens to me. I saw it coming, or whatever the narrative.
Yeah. So the second you take ownership, it begins to rewire your brain. Then reality changes. And what was consistent will begin to change. And what was consistent was you. You are the one in all of your problems. That's the one thing that's in all the problems is you. So you need to change these problems.
Yeah, nobody can take away your tranquility except for you.
So the only way, the most powerful, impactful way to dissolve a pattern, you don't have to go to a psychologist, you don't have to do years of anything, is to constantly just be aware of it, to clearly see it. It could be from this situation. It could be from that.
To choose to do something about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this big mega shift. But like you say, baby goat, micro steps.
Micro steps, yeah. Yeah, so that's how we dissolve patterns, is by clearly seeing them and then committing to taking ownership. Then you'll notice, like in your body, naturally we resist it. We keep resisting, like, oh, I know this pattern's here, but I'm resisting it. I'm going to go into blame. I'm going to blame everybody else but me.
Because the blame gives me a dopamine hit.
Yes. Yeah.
Makes me feel good.
Yeah, you go back to the victim thing. Yeah, because it gives you that yeah, but then if you've like the partner that is there to complete the other partner,
to remind that you're here on a bigger mission.
Yeah. Then we can focus on this state change of moving from resistance to flow. I'm no longer resisting reality. What is showing up as in the way is the way. It's showing up for you to resolve the pattern. So what's showing up in your life right now? I don't know. What's showing up for you?
I mean, what's showing up for me.
I do.
Jesus.
You want me to tell you?
Yeah. You could see it clearly. Yeah, well, I mean, showing up for me is just not hydrating my vessel enough.
So not taking self-care.
Self-care and just, like, oh, I had tea this morning. I had tea last night. But it's not enough. And my pattern is for me to run off not being hydrated enough. So
yeah, the world, I mean,
I feel
chronic
like also,
dehydration is like a thing across
it's
everybody.
a global thing.
I think it's a global thing, I mean, honor that water in your life. Water flows, water is sacred. Water nourishes, makes everything move nicely.
We come from water, we are water, holy water, yeah.
So then, so we go from this state of resistance to state of flow. Because we're no longer resisting the pattern. We see the pattern, and now we're going to put ourselves in states that allow us to shift the pattern. And then if we're able to sit with it, to be able to sit with the past in the present and kind of just break through it. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to just sit with, like, quite often I'm don't want to do the things that I know I need to do. I don't want to do it. I have these program and cycles of laziness or whatever you want to call it, procrastination.
Or just rebellion too. Like, don't tell me what to do, even though you're the one telling yourself that you need to do the thing. But there's this.
Yeah. And then that is exactly it, is that because the mind is coming from the past, sitting in the future here, quite often all of us, it's so funny that like your mom, your dad, like I, we all
We
think
start
like,
to embody our
yeah,
parents in the relationship. I
yeah.
become his mother, or he becomes my father, and we've normalized this a bit, like we've kind of like, overlooked it. Oh, it's a very common thing, and it's like, well, actually, be my husband,
and that's just going back to the moment, right?
yeah, to the present.
So the very Capricorn, C is for completion, C is for Capricorn.
C is for closing the loops.
Closing the loops. And these patterns keep repeating themselves, and these patterns come from this kind of flight or flight response to life.
Mm-hmm.
So we're, going from the survival of life to this very conscious thriving in life, which is just, I'm aware of the pattern. I'm aware of my ability. I'm not only aware of the pattern, but I'm confident in myself, in my ability to dissolve the pattern. And this is where the shift comes. And that's because I have a higher calling, that I'm not just about survival. I'm about helping people bloom. I'm about, Myrah's about empowering women. When you come from that space, it shifts everything.
And sometimes I know for some women, the mind, because we're so automatically wired in a way where we do so much, multitasking is kind of like our domain. And because it's a story, we're able to do all of it and still, show up for whatever the thing is. Maybe not, maybe consider that, concentrate on one thing at a time and give it your all, give it your 100%, give it your focus. And if the mind, because I know that for me, I'm very Vata, I'm very mind oriented, and I want to find solutions through my mental projections versus really sitting with them and feeling through it. Sometimes I won't give myself that opportunity to feel through it because my mind wants to rationalize it and can become really dominant in justifying all these things why I shouldn't, or all these ways where I have already. But in real reality, in the present, there has been no feeling, right? Because I have to pick up my son at 12, or whatever is it that the task at hand that needs to happen. So one tool for me is it's okay to outsource someone to help you do the motherly things. Right? Because again, the story for me, when you ask me what's coming up for you, right now I'm getting real. And what's coming up for me is being a controlling mother. I want to pick up my kids from school. I want to do the drop off. I want to do, the surprising them with snacks. I want to take them on a day trip to their favorite place. I want to take them out of school during a weekday and have a one-on-one with them. And yeah, all those things are great, but also at the extent of me being moody or being extra exhausted
and not taking care of
myself,
you see the cycle of that,
and
right?
being super dehydrated because I hadn't had time to actually drink water and sit.
Because you were running around the town taking care of the kids all day.
Yeah,
beautiful.
When I'm
You're
in
an
Bali
amazing mother
for a specific reason, for that motherly support, and I oscillate between that. There's periods where I'm fully engaged, and then there's periods where usually it's when I'm sick, where I hands off and allow my external domain to just help and assist. And now I'm actually at a point this week I've practiced where I'm doing drop off, and my support can do the pickup, and it's
I'm support.
And it's liberating so much. And I'm going to keep doing it. So that's what's coming up for me. And it's also been the story that, I wanted my mom to pick me up, and only my dad picked me up, and I really wanted mom time, and I never had enough mom time. So it's that regurgitation of my past.
What's coming up for me, I'm just so in awe of I just started talking about completions a week, 2 weeks ago, and I wrote it down, I put it on my wall, and I just kept thinking about it, and then quite magically, things that needed to be complete started to show up. And I'm like, wow, I just set the intention, and now I didn't have to look for what needs to be completed. The thing just shows up, and that's the beauty of life, is that you will be given opportunities over and over again to complete things. You just have to be able to see them and put them into action. Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. Let's complete this podcast.
Yeah, and as we finish, maybe, think about any actions you want to take to allow completions in your life. Are there people you need to talk to, old friends, new friends? Are there bills you need to pay? Is there banks that need to be reconciled? Is there taxes that need to be done? Is there any cleaning up you want to do with your kids, yourself?
Anything that's taking up space in your heart and in your mind, that's kind of an indication to actually make space to look at the space that it's taking up. So then you can make space for emptying the self so that you can be more present. You can be, the embodiment of the, evolution of tradition of what it is to be a human on the planet.
Yeah, and then to have those harder conversations with friends and family, whoever, and it's like, hey, look, I saw how I did this, and I'm sorry I showed up in that way, And in that way, maturity happens, not just for you, but for them as well. And in a way, humanity as a whole can start to grow up, because that's what humanity needs right now, is to grow up and become more mature.
A lot of it is that we're also charged up. In Latin America, we call it cargada. Estás muy cargada. You're so charged, So it's time to lighten the load.
Lighten the load and grow up, I guess.
Maturation. Yeah. Well, maturity, a lot of people, a lot of humans, have been initiated into what it is to be a mature version of
themselves.
Themselves.
Yeah. And so that is really comes from your ability to put closure to things, and start. And as you do it, even as you take the smallest closure to the biggest closure, you start to gain a level of confidence in yourself. And then when you start to do it in the community with your friends and family, those completions allow a level of maturity to up level. And now you become more mature. Your friends' community becomes more mature. The planet becomes more mature. And then all of a sudden you start to see world leaders that are more mature, and they're doing things that are humane and compassionate. For example, it's just that's just the way it is, because the world is operating from the past, from these diapers, these world leaders in diapers. But we'll go there later.
Yes, for another topic at a later time.
Yeah, so we hope that with completions, you can begin to see life flowing like water.
Yeah, like water.
To access your power in new ways, because you can create a beautiful future for yourself right now.
You just have to choose. What's going to give me more energy.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a wrap for today. Satnam.
Satnam.
Yeah.